Hello everybody, we have made it to October 31st. It's time for the last Halloween reading for this year. And it's going to be the biggest pumpkin ever. Guess if you're a bunch of mice, a small pumpkin would be the biggest pumpkin ever. This one's by Steve Knowles. Once there were two mice who fell in love with the same pumpkin. Clayton, the house mouse, noticed it one day in the vegetable garden. It was still little and green. But Clayton thought he could make it grow really big. It might even get big enough to win the grand prize at the town pumpkin contest. Desmond, the field mouse, discovered the pumpkin the same day. He thought that if he helped it grow, it could become the biggest jack-o'-lantern in the neighborhood. That afternoon, Clayton watered the pumpkin. He also mixed up some fertilizer of manure and water, and spread the mixture around the pumpkin to make it grow large. That very same night, Desmond went into the garden and watered the pumpkin, too. He also mixed some manure mixed in with the water around it. The next day, Clayton watered and fertilized the pumpkin again. The next night, Desmond did the same. The pumpkin began to grow. By the end of the month, the pumpkin was so large that Clayton couldn't believe his eyes. All right. My goodness, said Clayton's mother, and it's not even fully grown. Clayton shrugged. All I do is water it, he said. Clayton's mother whispered in his ear, I want the pumpkin to grow bigger faster, she said. You should use sugar water. That night, Desmond brought his brother Morris to see the pumpkin. Morris knew everything there was to know about growing things. That's some pumpkin, he said. Desmond shrugged. All I do is water it, he said. Morris whispered in his ears. You should try using sugar water, he said. Clayton was amazed. He ran down the road and peeked into his friend Jimmy's pumpkin patch. The pumpkin Jimmy was growing for the contest looked much smaller. Clayton scratched his head. I have an amazing pumpkin, he said out loud. I think I'm going to win the contest. That night, Desmond and his brother Morris spent a long time looking at the pumpkin. How do you think it got that big? Desmond asked. Morris shrugged. a little luck, a little skill. It's going to make some jack-o'-lantern, said Desmond. I'm sure it is, Morris. A week later, Clayton noticed the pumpkin was bigger than the family car. During the day, everyone he knew came to admire it. And at night, all the field mice gathered around to do the same. By now, summer was almost over. In a week, the pumpkin would be fully grown and start turning yellowish and then orange. A few weeks after that, it would be ripe and ready for the pumpkin contest. Clayton could hardly wait. The pumpkin was growing so fast, it would soon be larger than his house. Then he had a terrible thought. If the pumpkin was so big, how would he get it to the contest? It wouldn't fit in the red wagon. It wouldn't even fit in the truck. Clayton decided to worry about this when the time had come. Clayton stopped humming. He put down his pile of blankets. He peered around the corner of the pumpkin. Desmond stopped singing. He put down his blanket and peered around the corner of the pumpkin. The two of them bumped heads and fell down. "You've been feeding the pumpkin," said Clayton. "You've been feeding the pumpkin," said Desmond. "That's why it got so big," said Clayton. "That's why it got so big," said Desmond, then burst into laughter. When everything had been explained, Clayton said, "I know I'll win the contest if I can get the pumpkin to town." Desmond smiled. "I'll help you. Just let me carve the pumpkin into a jack-o'-lantern for Halloween when the contest is over." "It's a deal," said Clayton. "A deal," said Desmond. And they shook hands on it. The morning of the contest was bright and sunny. Mice were bringing their pumpkins into town square by trucks and cars and wagons. Some were rolling them along on the ground. Suddenly, all stopped short over the field. Over the field came the biggest pumpkin anyone had ever seen. It was being pulled by hundreds of field mouses on motorcycles. When the celebration was over, the 100 field mice pulled the pumpkin back to the field. The day before Halloween, they carved it into a jack-o'-lantern. The best jack-o'-lantern ever. And on Halloween night, it's wonderful. Smiling face could be seen glowing for miles around. Right, and that was today's story. So I don't know if there's a whole lot of Thanksgiving stories out there. So I don't know if I'll continue this story reading into Thanksgiving. But I do know I will do this again for Christmas. For the 25 days leading up to Christmas. So that's something to look forward to on this channel. But we'll see what next month brings. So until we see each other again tomorrow, bye bye for now.